Hi, everybody. This is David Noor, and I want to thank you for taking the time to join us for this continued webinar series leading up to the Co-Create book launch. I want you to get a taste for my commitment to these webinars because there was a massive rainstorm in Atlanta, including tornadoes yesterday, and Delta Airlines, my favorite, canceled, I think, a couple hundred flights, and 4 of mine were one of them, so I got about 3 hours of sleep, and I'm actually doing this session from a client visit in Orlando, Florida. So I went from D.C. down to Florida, but I've carved out this time to share hopefully some insights with you about a topic that I'm really excited about. I've been talking about for a while, and that's adaptive innovation. And it's obviously included in the Co-Create book. So a couple quick housekeeping notes. I'm digitally recording this session, and I'll share with you a link to, if you missed any of the previous ones, to go there. I'm also using the hashtag Co-Create-Book, and my handle, just @DavidNoor, if you want to share at any point insights with your relationships. That's how you can do it. If we haven't met or you don't know about my background, I've spent the last couple of decades really focused on business relationships, specifically to fuel personal, team, organizational growth. I speak globally on a handful of topics. I consult, oddly enough, at a broad array of companies, which keeps it exciting. No 2 hours are the same. So Evershed Sutherland is a global law firm. ThyssenKrupp is a global manufacturer of elevators and escalators. American Society of Microbiology, or all the scientists, the scientific community, and of course IPREO is a Goldman Sachs Blackstone joint venture. What they all have in common are they want to leverage relationships to accelerate getting things done. I do a lot of executive coaching. I've added a couple in the last couple of months, but about 30 or so I've gone through in the last couple of years. And Co-Create is actually my 10th book since 2008. At some point you read enough, you talk to people enough, you see similar challenges across a very broad spectrum of clients that you feel like you have something to say. On a personal level, I have a young family. I love my 2 crazy dogs. I'm an old Eagle Scout, and my son's in scouting, and I've become passionate about motorcycles and motorcycle rides and just learning both how to work on them and ride them more recently. This is a series, so the last couple I did an introduction to Co-Create. The last time I talked about this idea of co-creating, making time for introspection, and they're all on the website with a similar digital recording of the sessions. Obviously today I'm going to talk about adaptive innovation. Next Tuesday we're going to reconnect on this idea of strategic relationships and how do you leverage those to co-create. I'm going to talk about customer experience in a couple of weeks. Really thinking through how to provoke. I work with a lot of mature companies and mature industries, and they really are struggling in not just getting caught up, but provoking and leading through provocation. So we'll talk more about that. The idea of Co-Create Upward, the spiral of growth, what does that look like? And then really exceptional experiences within and external to the organization. The night before the actual publication date, which is May the 9th. That's the website, cocreatebook.com, where you can, again, get access to past recordings and download the canvas and all kinds of other good stuff. So that's a good place to go to afterwards. In terms of today's agenda, I want to talk about 3 things. I think it's important to revisit the Co-Create premise. Where did the idea come from? How did I get here? Obviously, I'm going to spend the bulk of our time together with this idea of adaptive innovation. And then I want to leave you with hopefully practical, pragmatic ideas, both as individuals, but hopefully as stewards of your teams, your organization, of what to go do with this information. I don't know about you. I've read books where they're interesting, and then you kind of scratch your head and like, well, okay, what are you going to do with this? So I've always believed it should be a tool in helping you with the application of the idea, not just the introduction of it. So let's take it one at a time. The Co-Create premise. Books for me, I jokingly and terribly tell my male friends is the closest thing we'll ever come to giving birth, because books for me have to percolate. The idea comes, and again, you start to see similar challenges in very different types of companies. For me, in a lot of ways, the book process starts with a question. And the question that really kind of nagged at me for a long time is, if I'm this company's biggest competitor, how would I disrupt it? How would I disrupt this business model? How would I disrupt its revenue model? How would I disrupt this channel or its product portfolio? Or right? If I want to compete, if I really want to compete in this day and age, I want to get under somebody's skin. I just saw, I'm going to write about this. I saw some really interesting data about Schick, the razor blade guys, right? They're losing market share at a massive rate compared to, I think it's the Dollar Shave Club, and I actually use Harry's. And Harry's are these startup guys that are friends of the Warby Parker guys. And they don't have the manufacturing or the distribution or the channels that Schick does. But because they're smaller, they're nimble, they went and bought, they spent $100 million and bought literally a steel razor blade manufacturing facility in Germany, and they've built an incredible direct-to-consumer market. Now they have millions of customers, and by the way, it's consumables. So I'm ordering shaving cream and razor blades and even razors on a regular basis. And I have a young son, but I can't wait. You don't want to rush time away, but I can't wait for him to get older. I'm going to show him how to shave with a Harry's razor blade. So how would your biggest competition dramatically disrupt your organization, disrupt your business? And I've talked a lot about if you keep doing business as usual, you're going to be irrelevant. If you compete for the moment with a little bit, better mousetrap, yeah, you'll be momentary. It's often a clever offering. How will you remain relevant in the way you compete in the future? And what I want you to really think about is that customer experience. And if you look at the bottom, the brand, the value proposition, and the client's journey lead to that customer experience. And all of us, think of the last time you bought something, right? We evaluate, the light bulb goes off of, we need to, we discover we have a need or we want an application of that. We kind of consider our different options. We come back to evaluation. So that infinity loop, then and actually in the buy-in, we use it and we come back to evaluation. We want to use more of it or we want to use it differently or different applications of it, or right? So brands that are teams that are successful find ways to fit. They become in essence a guest in our journey. And it's that experience journey that evaluation journey that we're constantly going through. So the co-create premise focused on how will you remain relevant, how will you compete in the future, is based on the fact that none of us are the smartest person in the room. A mentor of mine always says, if you are, you're in the wrong room, right? So we don't all have the answers. The market is incredibly demanding, so that agility, the nimbleness matters more than ever before. Transparency is the norm, and you've got to bring a unique perspective to kind of what's happening in the market. And I don't know, I can't think of a scenario when an individual, a team, an organization doesn't need to evolve to remain relevant, again, in the business context. I'm spending some time with a company that's been around since the 60s, and they've done really well, and they grew and then they declined, and now they're really thinking about their evolution. Last couple of days I was with an organization that's 100 plus years old, right? And they have to evolve. And I love this term from one of my CEO clients, purposeful abandonment, right? Intentionally letting go of some of the things in your past so you can spring cleaning, right? Make room for the next chapter in your evolution. So what if that evolution, right, that growth cycle, the unique product service offering came from fewer but more meaningful, more impactful strategic relationships, right? Employees, partners, customers, investors. Just a quick reminder, if you have questions, if you have comments, I will pause like I'm doing now. So Kent, I pre-ordered Co-Create book from Amazon today. I'm eager to read it. Very kind, Ken. I hope there's one or two decent ideas in here that you can put to use, but I appreciate that. So co-creation, and again, a lot of what I read out there, a lot of the research that I did was a lot of times talking about just customers, and it's not your traditional partnerships. It's not, collaboration. I've always talked about collaboration, and for sake of collaboration is a waste of time. Collaboration to make that end result stronger is priceless. And in my experience, co-creation opportunities can come from a lot of different places, right? That employee at the edge of where your business delivers its value, partners that demonstrate a vested interest in your success, customers who don't treat you by RFPs, but they jointly want to sit around the table and solve problems. Investors who don't just give you dumb money, they give you money, but also give you the expertise. Media relationships that see you not just as a source, but helping you shed some light on potential trends, and of course your community at large. So I call it the co-create economy or the co-create effect, because it really can come from a lot of different places. I also talk about co-create as a sequel to actually my first book, Relationship Economics, and probably my most successful one. And in Relationship Economics, and I'm embarking on a journey to write the third edition of that book. I talk about these very unique stages. On the left, the mapping, kind of really planning, really being intentional about the relationships you invest in. The yellow box in the middle, whether you're relating or nurturing or you're sustaining or you're requesting, it's the engine kind of that our interactions kind of go through. Co-creation is really the red box to the right, which is really capitalizing. It's really taking a few of the ones that are in the middle to really elevate your business to a very different level, to really think about the evolution of your business very differently. And as such, it really is foundational. So relationships, and again, we'll talk a lot more about this in the next session when I talk about strategic relationships, is really the foundation for you to really succeed in that co-creation process. 8 chapters in the book. I don't know, why books have to be 10 chapters, but I came up with 8. Introspection we've talked about. Adaptive innovation is obviously this one, and I talk about this idea of faint signals, and I'll talk more about that. Strategic relationships, obviously we'll get to a guest in your customer's journey. I alluded to earlier, leading through provocation. I've always believed a certain amount of pushback is healthy in relationships. So what does that look like in a respectful way? Spiral of growth. I'm a big believer of what I call leading drivers, not lagging indicators. Right? So we'll talk about that. Exceptional experiences, how do you anticipate, how to use some cognitive technology to start predicting. And then the last one is all about this canvas. So I'll show you examples of that. So let's jump into adaptive innovation. Well, there's some very unique attributes to it. And I want to boil this down for you. And we see this all around. I have a teenage son who is, I'm convinced, borderline obsessed with tennis shoes, right? And it's his friends that push him into this, right? He sees that, John or Joe or Sam are now wearing this new cool tennis shoes, and then he's growing, right? And they go through tennis shoes like I think you and I, go through a meal. It seems like he needs a new pair every other day. But tennis shoes, I can't tell the difference, other than the colors, and this one's got a different heel. But have you ever seen a tennis shoe ad, or have you ever looked into some of that? They I'm convinced, drink way too much of their own Kool-Aid, because if it was up to them, that tennis shoes would propel me to the moon, right? So there's a lot of noise, and that's just, I'm not picking on tennis shoes, guys. I'm just giving an example of there's a lot of noise in all of our markets, right? New and improved on every corner, right? So you have to really wonder, how can you separate the signal from the noise? And make no mistake about it, in every one of our industries, there's just a lot of noise. Everybody's bigger. Everybody's more improved. Everybody is somehow better. And is it just sizzle, or is there really substantially something different, right? What I do care about is what I call faint market signals. And a key objective in adaptive innovation is for you to start getting better at identifying those faint market signals. And I'll explain more about that in a second. Rapidly validating the critical assumptions you make. Just because you see everybody walking around, I think there's one of the financial service guys has a TV commercial on right now where I think it's Kevin Spacey. I don't know who he represents, but he walks around and maybe E-Trade, I don't know. But he walks around and he sees everybody with beards, right? All the guys have now clean cut and they have beards, and then he sees this guy coming out of a barber, and he's got it all shaven off. And so what assumptions are you making about those market signals and those faint market signals that you identify? And so we're going to talk a lot about assumptions in a second. And then rolling out what I call pilots and prototypes, right? So how often have you seen people, and we all do this, right? We invest in a I buy a car and then I have remorse because the car doesn't do what I thought it would do, right? What if there was a way to, and then people do this now, there's a model now where you could, not just a rental car, that's the easy way to do it, but I think the company's called Clutch, that you can actually, for a monthly fee, you can drive different cars, right? So before you make a big commitment, it's a pilot, it's a prototype of that experience, if you will, right? So 4 key objectives to adaptive innovation. I'm going to touch up on each. And again, as a reminder, if you have questions, comments, you want me to clarify any of these, please use the question section and go to webinar tool on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll pause periodically to address them. So without this being really busy, I want you to think about this idea of adaptive innovation as companies traditionally get a feedback loop mechanism on the left-hand side from the customers, right? And you see this in customer surveys. And again, I'm based out of Atlanta. I fly Delta Airlines all the time. I'm convinced after every trip they send me a survey, and I've filled out the first few, and nothing changed, nothing happened. So I've stopped filling them out because I don't think they do anything. So not only the response rate from those surveys are I think single digits. If you're getting double digits, you're lucky. But it doesn't give you, I don't believe, the full picture. As evident by Delta Airlines will ask me, how was your experience with the gate agent? Well, the gate agent was fine. It was the flight crew that was rude. Or the gate agent was fine. The flight crew is my chair is crappy because they're still using some of the Northwest fleet, right? So they were often asking the wrong questions. Now look at the right-hand side. What if that same company not only got feedback from its traditional customers, but also the employees and the partners? So it's not just more of data sources. It's really this iterative process is what I'm trying to illustrate here. And let's get feedback from existing customers and traditional customers, but also net new customers, but also new markets and the media and the partners, and incorporate that into trends. So it's a much richer, much more iterative process that hopefully will allow the company to respond in a more agile, nimble way. So let's not collect a whole bunch of survey data and look at it once a year. How do we look at daily? How do we look at hourly? How do we look at this constant available sources of insights to us that are just all around us, right? I think the right company hopefully becomes more agile, becomes more nimble through this idea. So let me give you a couple of examples. Most of you know of Google. Most of us use Google for our search, but with the announcement of Alphabet, what it highlights is, wow, they do a heck of a lot more than just search. Like, do you know Google bought Nest? And I've got a few of these, the thermostat and the carbon monoxide and the sensors and the cameras, and right? Well, did you know there's Google Ventures where they fund new ideas? Did you know there's Google Capital, Google Fiber coming to your house, and Google X is working on really big, right? So you may have known probably the blue box at the very bottom, but most people are not familiar with the broader offering. One of the more interesting ones is their autonomous driving vehicles. Now, again, not logical to think, why would I search to, well, it's more than just a search company. And what's really fascinating about this autonomous car world is they've launched something called Sidewalk Labs, and I talk about this in the book. And it's fascinating because what they did is they took in pilot markets, and I've got to give it kudos to, I don't necessarily rave about a lot of our government initiatives or efforts, but the Department of Transportation had a contest, and I think I've got, Smart City Challenge. And a whole bunch of cities participated, and there's some finalists. And what Sidewalk Labs, part of Google, has done is take data from very different, and that's what the last image was, very different parts of the city, very different data sources, and they combine that to solve some really challenging issues, right? So not only just automation, but connected vehicles and analytics and smart grids. By the way, I don't know if you are aware, but I live in Atlanta. And if you remember news in the last week or two, we had the brilliant idea of storing some highly flammable right, material, construction material under one of our biggest roads, right, the I-85, which is a major artery in Atlanta, right? And we locked it up, but the homeless people still got in there, and one of them smoked crack, cocaine and crack, and lit the place on fire. And now the Georgia DOT is telling everybody not only it impacts about 200,000 people that go through that, it's a major tollway every day, but now they're telling everybody June 15th before it's repaired, right? So how do you now think of all the side streets and all the other arteries that are just going to be painfully clogged, and what should take you 15 minutes will take you hour and a half to get there? So what if they sidewalk light? Those are the kinds of challenges they're trying to solve. What if the autonomous cars had an intelligent Waze functionality built in and knew automatically to avoid those without you having to do it, right? Smart land use, connected, involved citizens. You can kind of see the other challenges on the screen. It's fascinating, right? Really thinking about what's happening all around you. And what I've studied, and a guy named Matt Ballantyne was the inspiration for this, is that you can do iteration, which is doing the same things better, and a lot of companies, a lot of teams are very good at this. You can do innovation, which is you're really creating new things, or you can do disruption, which is the new things that make the olds obsolete. Now, a lot of companies are very good at iteration. Few do innovation. Very few really do disruption well. So what does that look like? Well, again, let's take something you're very familiar with, right? I don't know about your house. We have a few of these things around ours. Of course, when dogs are puppies, they love to chew them too, which is a whole different story. But remotes, right? I don't know. I'm dating myself. When I don't know about you, when I was a kid, you had to walk up to the TV and turn a knob to change channels. And I think we had, 3, maybe 10 channels, right? So remotes have come a long way, and I think most people would agree. Right? When it's company created, you go from an original remote to last year's model, and here's a new and improved, and now remotes are, at our house, it's on our iPad, right? So now it's an app that runs the TV and the DVR and runs the PlayStation and the music and Pandora, and it just doesn't, it's not connected to the microwave yet. Wait till the next model. So this is the company created one. What's fascinating about and again, I think you would agree, those are a combination of iteration, and maybe the iPad one is potentially an innovation because you no longer need the physical buttons, and I don't have to manufacture that, and I can get away from that, and the manufacturing, and really focus on the app. What if the TV was intelligent enough to understand you, your likes, your preferences, your tastes, and it recommended, would you like to watch episode 2 of the series, or the recommendation engines that we all see on Amazon today? People who bought, this T-shirt and this DVD also bought this book. Based on, I think Netflix does some of that today, right? Based on the drama series you like or the action that you like, here's another show that you might be interested in that might never come across our radar. Well, guess what? There's people working on that exact idea today. So an intelligent, right, system that understands your behavior and with a high degree of confidence predicts, because now what do we have? 500,000 channels, especially if you think of some of these cable packages. So now look at the disruption in that model. I no longer not only need the remote. Why do I need the cable set-top box, or why do I need different packages from my cable company, or why do I need Hulu and a Netflix and a Roku and all these different services? And what does that do to the revenue model or the business model of content production and distribution? And I've done some work for Cox Cable, right? What does that do to their business? So that's an example of real disruption, is where my device, and everybody talks about Internet of Things. The fascinating thing of Internet of Things to me is when it starts to get to know you and your likes and preferences and tastes, and right? And with a high degree of confidence, it starts to anticipate what you need next, right? Other examples, iPads. I don't know about you. We have a few. I use them for work. We have them at home. Kids do their homeworks on these things. Do any of you remember the original kind of tablet idea that I think John Sculley came up with? Yeah, the Newton. I actually bought one of these things, and it was kind of cool, but it had a stylus. And I distinctly remember when Jobs came back to Apple, he said, God gave us 10 stylus, and they're called fingers. Let's not create another one. So the beautiful part about innovation and disruption is a lot of times they come from iteration. But I said earlier, a lot of people do iteration well, few do innovation, very few do disruption. And in my experience, the more mature the company in the industry, the more, let's be honest, baggage that's there, the more disruption is unlikely because of all that legacy, because of all that history, because of all that. Well, that's the way we've always done it. Again, I'm trying to tell you, I'm with a company today that's been around since the 60s, and we're talking several billion in revenue. So they're obviously they're doing something right. But you peel back the onion, and right, all kinds of challenges, and because they do iteration really well, maybe innovation in a couple places, but it's just bogged down to be able to think in a real disruptive way. And we haven't even talked about what many believe will be the biggest disruption in that whole play. And I finally broke down and bought a Series 2 Apple Watch. And I got to tell you, I'm genuinely fascinated by not the present, but the possibilities of what you could do with just the tilt of your wrist. And it's not futuristic to think, this thing now becomes that I travel a lot, becomes my universal key to open my hotel room. It becomes not only my payment, but a lot of my kind of preferences. Do I really have to go and order a sandwich, or can I just, right? Now you can order Starbucks and have it ready to pick up. So again, imagine the possibilities. Imagine the disruptive possibilities of now taking these devices from our computers, our desktops, to a laptop, to now a tablet, to now a smartphone, to now on our wrists. One of the tenets that I talk about, and again, I want you to jump in. If you have questions or comments or examples that you can think of, I'd love to hear from you. Again, just use the question section in the right-hand side of your screen, and by all means, please jump in. But one of the things I talk about, and again, I've been a big proponent of for some time, is you got to listen louder. If you want to get really good at this idea of adaptive innovation, you as an individual, as a team, as an organization, have to figure out how to listen louder. What does that mean? You want to expand the organization's ability to kind of really the capacity to scan the environment, right? To not only find, but you also have the right executive. And that executive has got to be astute enough to prioritize, right, the relevant information you do find in the strategic planning, in innovation, in marketing. Drucker is famous for saying there's fundamentally two pieces to every business. It's innovation and it's marketing. Can you come up with interesting products and services that not just because you think they're cool, but the market is find a need, fill a need, right? There's a market demand for it. And then can you get the word out? Can you create awareness? Can you create what I call in the book market gravity or market pull? So let me give you, again, I like practical examples, right? So this is year, crazy to believe. This is year, I started in 2002. This is 2017, year 15 of the business, right? And, you heard initially I talked a lot about, I focus on relationships, and relationships are a double-edged sword. Think of your own for a second. It doesn't make sense by itself, right? Nobody builds relationships because they have nothing else to do. They build relationships to create some sort of a result, outcome. They want to find a job. They want to grow their business. They want to go attract investors. They want to go hire people, right? That's the result, the outcome of which they want to build relationships. They want to build their network to facilitate or accelerate getting there, right? So I'm on the board of a couple companies, and as such, I'm active in the National Association of Corporate Directors. This is an industry association. If you're on a corporate, nonprofit, private company, public company board, you pay a handsome fee, and you join the National Association of Corporate Directors. And I got to tell you, I love what they call the Global Board Leadership Summit, right? This is their annual meeting 3 to 5,000 people or so show up at this thing, and you can see Madeleine Albright, our first female Secretary of State, is going to talk about the geopolitical and business, and right. So it's a great gathering. It's at Washington D.C. I've gone to last, I think, 3 of these things. Really great gatherings, right? And as you can imagine, like any other big conference or event, you have a lot of they have these networking events, and you meet inevitably. The last several years, as you network, as you talk to people and exchange business cards, and you inevitably get the blank one, right? There's no logo; it just has the person's name. They blurb out that I'm looking for a board seat, and then you politely ask about their backgrounds, and and by the way, very competent, very capable people, right? They were the former CFO of this company or former CIO of this company, but it's a numbers game they're playing. So they're talking to a lot of people about trying to find those really expensive real estate. Think about a board of directors seat is pretty expensive real estate. So a couple of years ago, I heard a really sharp guy named Adam Epstein, who wrote a book called The Perfect Corporate Board, talk about small cap companies, right? If you think about it, most of the New York Stock Exchange, most of the NASDAQ companies are sub 300 million in market cap, right? That's the capital. That's the size of the company. So there's only so many Johnson & Johnson board seats, right? Unfortunately, a lot of these executives who retire or they're thinking of the next chapter in their professional careers, they want to join a board, but it's not going to be Johnson & Johnson. It's going to be one of these small caps. So about a year or so ago, Adam and I put our heads together. And we thought about it and really came up with fundamentally our respective strengths. A, it's a relationship play. B, it's about a fundamental understanding in board dynamics, right? How does a board work, and how does it govern, and how is it different than management? And so we've created a new service called Board Nav. But I don't want to be a recruiter. That's not what it's for. I want to go to companies and help their senior executives learn how to be really effective board members. Because our premise, our research, not only those small cap public companies, but a lot of the growing private companies, a lot of these larger family-based businesses could really benefit from independent stewardship. So this is an example of taking each of our respective businesses, giving up a little bit of ourselves, time, effort, resources, to create something that we're both better off. Neither one could really do this alone. It is unique in the market, and it sets you apart from everybody else. And you saw a need in the market. I want to join a board, right? So I don't want to do it for individuals, but it's a great opportunity to go into companies and do that. And that's just one example of me and my small company, but I think you get the gist of where the idea comes from. So what are the components of listening louder? Environmental scanning, right? So I went to 3 of those global meetings, and I've met a whole bunch of people who want to join boards, and they just give out their business cards and send out their resumes, and you start to see early signs. You start to see influential trends. You meet really sharp people, and you think, no way they would have a hard time joining a board, in my example, right? So you start to scan the environment. Market intelligence is the insights into behaviors of your target group. So what is this target audience thinking, feeling, doing that I need to know that, by the way, is relevant to me? Everybody talks about millennials. Here's newsflash for you. Millennials are now in their 30s. So if you think of this changing, not just demographic, but changing psychographic, what do you know about Generation Z? And how can you start anticipating, if that's your target audience, what are they going to want or need from you and your products, your services? With the board thing, I'm actually going after much more senior folks. This is in the sunset of their careers. Some companies have a mandatory retirement age of, say, 60. Well, if you know any 60-year-olds, they're still energetic. By the way, they still probably have another 10 to 15 years to give back to the market. So what is happening in, again, the behaviors of that target group that you should pay attention to? And by the way, market sensing is acting on those insights. So you have environmental scan, you get insights there. You get market intelligence, you get insights into behaviors there. Market sensing is all about acting on it. And I have a mentor who's driven into me. When you're 80% ready, move. The last 20% doesn't matter. How many people have you met that wait for something to be perfect before they take it out? Wait for it to be just right. And by the way, they've missed the market opportunity. Everybody else went right by them. When you're 80% ready, you have to move. This is an agile, nimble market we're all competing in. Get out, get in the market. I'm going to talk about the next step. So listening louder, an example I think I gave in the last session as well is things like sentiment analysis. So using the Net Promoter Score to really understand what people recommend you. And think about it a second. Who do we recommend? People we have good experiences with. But the number itself isn't the answer. It's really the insights from analyzing the text down to the individual words. Were they saying in a positive way or a negative way? That gives you actionable insights, gives you something to kind of act on. So listening louder, again, if you think about a company standpoint, the further you go out, the more different types of signals you bring back, the broader, the more diverse portfolio of signal scouts, relationships you can build, the more value you create. Because now you're not just getting one part of the story, you're getting several parts of a much bigger story. And you're getting real insights, hopefully actionable insights into what to do next. So, again, examples. Everybody talks about fintech, right? The fintech apps, payments, and that kind of stuff. Has anybody thought about insurtech? Yeah. Take similar technologies where fintech is disturbing financial services, insurtech is disturbing insurance. Think of how many different insurance and reinsurance and product insurance and consumer platform. Look at all the different players are in that space. This is taken off in a big way. Or unfortunately, I couldn't use this in the book. Gardner has a real elaborate, rights and licensing and use parameters. But what I do appreciate is they create this technology, emerging technology hype cycle, and they talk about, kind of innovation triggers and then peak of inflated expectations and, throw of disillusionment, the slope of enlightenment, and then plateau of productivity. Look at all the technology. I don't know if you can read it or not, but, IoT, blockchain, machine learning, natural language question answering, virtual reality. And look at how far these things not only are, but are coming. And kind of, again, evolution of just this incredible hype that then really comes down to reality. But it's just they're all around us. So there's no shortage of, that's what I'm getting to here. There's no shortage of market signals all around you. What's important to talk, and again, there's a reason I talk about co-create as the sequel to relationship economics, because in relationship economics, one of the things that I talked about is the assumptions, the critical assumptions you make about a person or piece of information. That's right at the center. And the need to find 3 independent sources to verify, validate, and void the critical assumptions you're making about that person or piece of information. So earlier I said identify faint market signals, right? And really bring those in and really start prioritizing which ones are important. Part of that priority exercise, prioritization exercise, has to be validating your assumptions. Now, somebody asked, can you describe the difference between each of those? Sure. Verify is a lot of times factual. It's numbers, right? Is there really a 2.5 million potential customers in that market? Validate is, here's what direction we're thinking. Is that accurate? Is that really the direction we should go? Void is, no, you're digging for gold 50 feet over there. It's actually 5 feet below the surface over here. So void is as critical. It's almost like the stop doing, right? Or that is not a good path to pursue. So you're going to make in iteration, innovation, or disruption, you're going to make some assumptions. And what's critical in that process is that you find an independent mechanism, people that are not jaded, people that don't drink the Kool-Aid all day, every day, to verify, validate, or void the critical assumptions. The next step, a lot of people say, okay, David, we got some signals. What do we do? How do we do it? Again, I'm reminded of an old mentor who said, don't confuse selling and delivery, right? Go get people excited about your idea. Figure out how to deliver it as you go. That's what I call pilots and prototypes, right? What's important is you create, you learn, you repeat. Let me say it again. You create, You learn, you repeat. And if you don't grow, I love that quote, your innovation quotient of your company, if you don't invest in your people's creative capacity. You got it, just like our kids, right? You don't ever want to squash their ideas, their dreams. Dad, my son actually said this. He wants to zip line off the roof of the house right into the backyard pool. Of course, his mother had an immediate, heart attack of, David and the boy might just do that, right? So then I talked both of us out of it, right? But you want to encourage that creativity. You want maybe not off the zip line off the roof, but what if we did it right this way? And so as long as there's no parts get maimed, nobody gets permanently injured, but you want to fuel that creativity. Same thing inside of companies, right? How many times have you walked in a meeting where somebody says inevitably, that'll never work? Oh, hell, we tried that 20 years ago. Newsflash, right? A lot of things have changed in 20 years. So what's really important is that innovation doesn't become a department, and I see companies do this all the time. They build an innovation hub. How's that going, other than somebody's pet project? Innovation has to become an everywhere, everyday job. We see opportunities all around us. You want proof? Here we go. Guy named Eric Ries, I believe it's pronounced Ries, came up with a book called The Lean Startup several years ago. And what I appreciated about it was, look in the right middle of the page, build, measure, learn. He had worked for several startups, and he was really struggling in people that would build this great product and then try to take it to market, and it didn't have the features that target customers wanted. So what he learned about people that did this really well, and it's now really become a movement, is this idea of build something, right? Code it, measure it, code some more, take it to market, learn what people like and don't like, bring back, build again. So it's this iterative process that really helps you think through. And if you get a chance, look up Lean Startup. It's really a good opportunity to think differently about how you build something you take it to market. Marriott, right? A lot of brands, it's become now trendy for everybody. It's like a new accessory. Everybody has an app, right? Let's build an app. So everybody has an app. What I appreciate about Marriott's, guest request, it's the idea to chat with an associate. Yeah, can you imagine the idea to chat in the app with somebody in the hotel itself? How many times have you called and say, hey, where's your gym? How late is room service open? Hey, is there near sushi good somewhere? What if you could do that with a text message? And think of now what they could do with it digitally, whether it's from my phone or from my smartphone or my watch, right? So really like the idea of enabling that communication. The Adidas CEO, and I talk about a lot of these examples in the book. Adidas CEO came from TaylorMade, one of their brands, and made TaylorMade the golf clubs and stuff really successful. And he challenged Adidas to really think about, and I kid you not, that the analogy he used was Netflix for runners. That's where Avenue A came from. And it's a very different business model for Adidas. It's a subscription box where once a month a box shows up with some really cool things for runners. Yeah, they've figured out how to adapt the subscription model to this target audience. What is it they want? What is it they need? Think of seasonality. Think of different types of running. Think of different places, right? Fascinating way to engage that target audience very differently than you may have in the past. The last part of what I cover in this section is what I call needs-based segmentation. And I got to tell you, the credit to this goes to somebody who's become a good friend. But Bruce Kasanoff is one of my former CEOs, and a fascinating book that he wrote several years ago with Michael Hinshaw is called Smart Customers, Stupid Companies. And in it, he talks about how companies treat everybody exactly the same, right? So the big box do-it-yourself retailer, right, sends me the same ads and the same flyers in our Sunday paper that they probably send to you. Well, you and I do home repair very differently. I have a garage and I work on motorcycles, and I may do some of it myself, or I may bring others in to work with me, and right? So what Bruce says, and the SMART analogy, is an example of that needs-based segmentation. And just very quickly, right, he says segment your customers based on their needs, modularize your capabilities based on to meet those or exceed those needs. Anticipate what they're going to need from you next. Reward not just employees have expanded that to your relationships for win-win behavior, and then really transform those touch points. And I was really fascinated by that one. Like, what do you mean transform the touch points? Think of ads. Ads in a magazine, I don't know about you, I rip out, right? If there's not an article in back of it, I rip them out. But what about intelligent ads or mobile apps that understand behaviors, or right click-throughs that understand not only where I came from, but what am I looking for and how long do I stay before I move on? And think of the insights you get now from those along a continuum. So David, you were at our website last month and you clicked on these 3 things, and you came back this month and you clicked on these 5 things, and you came back the month after and you clicked on these 7 things. So what are we doing well? What do we need to do more of to not only have you visit? And the technology is there. That's the fascinating part. It's just most people are not using them. How do we learn more about you? How do we learn more about your behaviors, your interests, your wants, your needs, and really cater to more of that which you're interested in and less of what you're not? Again, personal example. I was writing for a whole bunch of magazines and putting a whole bunch of articles in my blog, and guess what? Nobody cared and didn't matter. Now I'm doing fewer, but hopefully I'm writing more impactful, more relevant articles, and I put them on LinkedIn. And if you get a chance, go look at my LinkedIn articles. We're getting 500, 1,000, 2,000 not only views, but shares and discussions and comments. And right, I ran into a mom at my kid's school at a soccer game. My daughter plays soccer, and she said, I read your article there on LinkedIn. It was fascinating. I'm like, really? I'm just not. I was really surprised, right? So thinking differently, leading differently starts with stop offering everything you do to everybody because it's not relevant to them. Start segmenting your target audience, not by demographics, not by age. Middle-aged white guys buy things very differently, but really by their needs. What is it that they need? How do we address that today? More importantly, how do we start anticipating what they need from us next? So in kind of bringing this whole thing home, how do you apply some of this? I love the idea of hopefully as you read Co-Create ideas and you hear these webinars, applying them. Have you seen this before? Right? Somebody presents a real complex process and at the end really makes it sound simple, and then you go close something. Or even this one. Now that we all agree, let's go back to our desk and discuss why this won't work. Right? So beyond hearing or getting exposed to interesting ideas, implementing them is always a challenge, right? So what I want to do with Co-Create is make it really practical, pragmatic. And one of the things I've done is we've created a workbook. So end of each chapter, I reference a tool. And these tools hopefully are practical and they're pragmatic, and there's some ideas in there of now how to go apply what you just read, how to go start doing some of the stuff that I just talked about. Because, I don't need to hear myself talk. I already have these ideas. What I want you to do is read it and say, what is David saying? More importantly, how do I apply this to kind of what I'm doing? And when I give you examples, so this is from a section on cognitive computing, and when I talk about a retail chain example, again, you see it overlaid on the models that I'm representing. So hopefully I'm trying to help you kind of transform yourself or your business over there, transpose yourself over there and really see how some of these ideas apply to what you're trying to do. I think one of the more interesting part of the book, and I'm being asked now to do more of these workshops and more of these sessions, is I took a couple of clients through I think better on my feet, I think better when I draw, and I took them through that's actually the example we use, and you see the 10 ideas in the bottom right corner. Now it's become chapter 8 of the book, which is now the Co-Create Canvas. And the canvas really helps you if you get the fundamental ideas, and I'll make this available as a PDF on our website, and it's also in the workbook, but it really allows you to apply a lot of the ideas in the book in the application of those ideas into your own business. And I'm really excited about that. So the 4 operating principles to really create co-creation: relationships are about empowerment, not hierarchy. less of a command and control org chart, more about relationships up, down, across, inside, outside the organization. It's a journey. How do we measure it? How do we constantly look to enhance people's experiences? Envision a much, much different value tomorrow than we do today. So what is that evolution? What does that really compelling value look like? And last but not least, alignment. How do we bridge silos inside and outside the organization very differently than you have in the past? So I hope this has been useful to you. I hope this is adding value to your world. I know you're busy, and I appreciate all of you. We got another great turnout to today's session. I hope we can continue the conversation. And I, again, encourage you to go to co-createbook.com. That's what the website looks like. This is a series, so again, we're back together next Tuesday, the 11th. I'm going to focus on strategic relationships and really give you some really practical insights in how to leverage, actually called the Jerry Maguire business model. How do you focus on fewer but really create deeper, more meaningful relationships? And you see the rest of the list. We got 2, 4, 5 left in the series. The launch party, if you are in Atlanta, Tuesday, May 2nd at the Gozueta Business School at Emory University. We're having a book launch party. I'd love to have you. If you're not, we're also going to make the content portion of that event available to you virtually with a live stream. So I hope you go to the website and sign up for that. I'm finalizing a co-create video, a simple animation to explain the key ideas in the book. We'll put that on the website. And we have both individuals and bulk order bonuses, links to different articles, videos, learning opportunities. So this is kind of where I need your help. I'm trying to create more awareness. So I hope, again, if you've gotten value out of today, tell a friend, share the post, invite others to join the future webinar series. But I've partnered with both on the single book purchase, but also the bulk with a few partners. So on the individual side, pre-order Co-Create, and I'll send you the Relationship Economics audiobook. It's 8 CDs. Obviously, you'll get the workbook. There's about 20-plus tools in there. And also, I'm creating a 30-minute video on coaching you through how to use the canvas, and I'll make that available. On the bulk, it's a great idea if you're going to get the team together to work on something. Think of an event of any kind, and there's ways we can customize it with signed book plates, logos on the cover, so on and so forth. And what I'm doing is if you order before the launch date, any kind of free customization, from doing a 30-minute talk for you or your team, a webinar or presentation similar to this one. I'm going into several places and doing keynotes and half-day and full-day workshops. And some of you have commented on the cool illustrations. I actually have a very talented counterpart, a colleague who does, Lynn Wilson, does a lot of the creative work in the book. I'll bring him with me, and we'll do a rough visualization strategy concept for you. So this is where I could use some help of, if you've got, if you see value in some of the stuff I've shared, I would appreciate your help in getting out on either individual copies, or if you're in position to order some bulk copies through the partners on the website, order some bulk copies as well. So again, this is the hashtag co-createbook.com. Hope you'll use it. Hope we can continue the discussion. And I want to leave you with this. Beth Comstock is a vice chair at GE, and at a recent GE gathering, I love this quote: "Get used to living in the in-between. The old is going away. The new has not yet fully emerged. It's uncomfortable, it's chaotic, but it's happening in pretty much every industry right now." Co-creation is all about whether you'll let things happen to you, or you'll go find a few strategic relationships to really make that evolution of yourself, your team, and your organization. With that note, my name is David Noor. I'm really excited about, I think it's my best book yet, called Co-Create. I hope you'll visit co-createbook.com to learn more. Until we visit next time, thanks everybody. Make it a great rest of the week. All the best. Bye-bye.